Iman in Wimbledon, good evening.
Good evening. Right, Daniel. So I'm calling on behalf of a friend of mine who is from abroad and came to the UK to do a religious education course at an institution. The way the course works is that the course itself is 2 years, and after that, the students are required to contractually work for the institution to teach religious education at an allocated location, either in the UK or elsewhere in the world. And the course is fully funded by a scholarship from the institution, including tuition, accommodations, flight, study trips, and also a stipend while in the UK. However, there's a clause in the contract that if the students do not fulfill the full commitment of 2 years of study followed by the 3 years of work and wish to pull out, then they'll be required to pay back to the institution what has been effectively spent on them. My friend has decided, having done part of the course, that this is not their cup of tea and they do not wish to pursue this pathway any longer. So contractually, they're therefore in the wrong. My question to you is, firstly, how would the institution have to practically pursue the student for the repayment of money? I assume ultimately it would mean some court proceedings of some sort. Secondly, how much more challenging is it for the institution to do this if the sum being pursued is higher or lower than £10,000, given that I assume that will determine if they can go to the small claims court or another court? And thirdly, how much more challenging is it for the institution, given that this student is not at all a UK resident or citizen, and that they or any court would have to physically, I guess, force them back to the UK to be pursued, I assume?
Iman, what a great question, and thank you so much for how prepared and structured that was, because that was just the ideal question. Thank you. So your first question, do you know, I was writing them down, I've written the word court proceedings, and I have absolutely no idea what that means. It was, you want to know whether it has to be recovered by court proceedings or whether there's another way.
For the institution, yes. I'm essentially, yes.
Yeah, they have to bring court proceedings. They can't just send bailiffs in or anything like that. And of course, the person isn't resident here, so there's nowhere to send the bailiffs. So it has to be done by way of court proceedings. Question 2, does it make a difference whether the amount is more or less than £10,000? Because that will be the difference between it being a small claim and a normal county court claim. The only difference it makes is that with a normal county court claim, your friend is going to be liable to pay the costs of the litigation. But I suspect all that will happen, whether it's a small claim or not a small claim, is that the institution will serve proceedings on him wherever he is resident now, because that can be done through embassies. And he will either not defend it or he will admit that he owes the money, because he hasn't really got a defence here, has he?
Yes.
Either way, the institution's going to get judgment against him, and then it can proceed to enforcing the judgment. That's step 3. Now, there are some countries where, question 3 rather, there are some countries where there are reciprocal agreements that judgments can just be enforced if some boxes are ticked, involving sending certain documents to consulates and so on. And there are a few countries where it's impossible to enforce a judgment. I don't want you to tell me what country your friend is in, but just you can look it up on Google very, very easily, just using the search phrase, how to enforce an English judgment in name the country. If it's a small amount of money, how much money are we talking? Because
it would be. It's if they decide to pursue the individual for the full amount that they're due, it's definitely going to be over £10,000, because the stipend itself was fairly generous for the 2 years of the course. Add on the tuition, the accommodation.
So he did the full 2 years, but then decided he didn't want to put up his end of the bargain.
Well, not the whole 2 years, but quite a large component of it. Yeah. And my guess is this has amounted to over 10,000 if it's going to be pursued in full.
Oh, I would have thought it's going to be way more than that. The institution will take a decision on whether it thinks it will recover anything. If he's got no money, and it knows he's got no money, it's probably not going to bother him on.
Right, okay. And therefore, so essentially this is not something that's going to be, even if the institution want to take on this full head on, it's going to take a good few years to sort out from their point of view, I would have thought, right?
No. They can get judgment in 3 to 6 months if he doesn't defend it.
Right.
All right.
Okay, fair enough. Cool.
Iman, thank you. You're a good friend, and that was a great question. Thank you for the call.